Well, welcome everybody to the Congregate Living and Social Services Licensing Board. At this time, I will open the public meeting. And I'd like to start this meeting with the introductions, since this is a new committee and we have obviously all new members. My name is John Rogers. I'm the Building and Health Official and currently the Acting Community Development Director. I'll be one of the staff liaisons for this committee. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andy Oram. I'm a retired sales guy who does some financial consulting these days.
Med Kopczynski, I'm presently the Economic Development Director for the City of Keene, and I represent the city more or less. There's a position for a city employee to be on the board.
I am Corinne Marcoux, and I am the staff liaison clerk, or city clerk for the staff liaison and for the board.
Hi, my name is Allison Welsh, and I oversee the Cheshire County Drug Court Program and the Behavioral Health Court Programs, which are comprised of the Alternative Sentencing Program and the Mental Health Court Program.
And I'm Martha Curtis. I am retired. I was a banker, and I'm looking forward to the meeting.
I'm Tom Savastano. I'm an ordained minister, and I run a nonprofit organization.
Great. Well, again, thanks everybody, especially for being part of this board. And one of the first things on our agenda tonight will be to elect a chair and a vice chair. So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion for the nomination of someone as chair.
Of course, everybody's jumping up and down wanting to be chair and vice chair. So just to be clear, what all a chair does is really just run the meeting. It's not really that complicated. It's not that hard. And vice chair is just in case the chair should happen to go to Florida for a couple of weeks. So your timing is pretty easy. Staff will help you with it, help you orient, help you manage it. It's not really that much of a lift for those of you who want to be chair or would like to be chair. I would count myself out because of the position that I do hold, and I do think it's more appropriate for a citizen to be chair. If you want me to play vice chair, that's fine, but if one of y'all wants to be chair, that'd be great.
And yeah, I would just certainly echo Med's comments that it's the meetings are run by the chair, and it's really just keeping the meeting moving forward, following the agenda, and certainly making sure to entertain motions for different actions that the board will take through once we receive applications and such. So, but staff is certainly here to help in any way, and any questions on procedurally as meetings are running forward, certainly more than welcome to help with that.
So with that,
I'm willing to do it if somebody wants to nominate me.
I apologize. I happily nominate Andy Oram to be the chair of the committee.
And I'll second that.
Great, thank you. So Alice, we have a nomination from Allison Welsh, and then we have a second from Martha Curtis for Andrew Oram to be chair. Could we have a vote, please?
well, I think you need to close the nominations or something like that, but I don't think there's a big rush for the door.
Right, no, yeah. No, great, but at this point in time, can we have a vote for this motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That's a unanimous vote. So actually, at this point in time, Andrew, I'm going to pass it on to you, and we would need to go through the same process for a vice chair.
What do I do? We're accepting nominations for vice chair.
Would one of you fine ladies or young gentlemen like to be vice chair? I forgot to tell you, by the way, your tax bill goes down by half if you. Just.
Can I do both jobs?
Yeah. All right, well, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. It's not that hard to be vice chair. It's a very ceremonial position.
I nominate Matt. Excuse me, could you show me your sign so I pronounce your last name correctly?
Kopczynski.
Oh, yes. I nominate Medard Kopsinski for the position of vice chair.
I second that nomination.
We have a motion from Andrew and a second from Allison.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so just as to move the agenda along, I'll kind of, what you see, all of you should have received a copy of the agenda in front of you. Certainly, being kind of the first meeting, there's not a lot to follow up this, but this is what you'll normally see on your agenda. And in place of that, if we had any unfinished business or, which we don't at this point in time, below that, you'll see the minutes of a previous meeting. Obviously, at our next meeting, you'll have a chance to review the minutes, and any corrections that you wanted to make could be brought up at this time. But then we would ask for a vote to adopt the minutes, that they're accurate to the previous meeting. I'm not quite sure why we have unfinished business here twice, Corinne. Just a
That was my oversight.
Okay.
Apologies.
Yep, no.
Strike that.
So with that, usually after we adopt the minutes of a previous meeting, at that point in time, we would, this currently, we're in a public meeting. Any applicants before this board will actually be a public hearing. So at that point in time, the chair would certainly recognize what the first application might be on the agenda. We'll have the talking points for the chair, just as usually it's going to be, it would, cover the address that they're proposing this at, the type of license, because there's multiple licenses that will be coming before the board that are listed as under the congregate care type of uses. So at that point in time, the applicant, the application itself would be recognized by the chair, kind of some of that read out by the chair, and then at that point, the staff would be recognized to give any more background that might be needed. As I'm not sure if the members are aware, but at this point in time, you'll see possibly two types of licenses come before the board, ones that have been through the planning board through a CUP process, if they're a new use. We have one that just recently went through the planning board CUP process over here on Washington Street. That one will be coming before the board, and it has gone through the CUP process. But you're also going to see some applications become before this committee that are already in place, they're already uses that previously were not required to have licenses, because this is all part of our new land development code. So we will have some uses that have been around for a while, but now are going to be required to get a license through this board. So you'll see those initially those two types of licenses become before you. With that said, once after the staff has kind of given the report, the chair can recognize the applicant to speak to their application. You'll probably see that happen in several different ways. Some people will get up and just pretty much read almost word for word from what their application has written on it. Other people, obviously, depending on how they are when in front of a group of people, how they are for presenting, might just kind of not say a lot, let their application kind of stand on its own. We would certainly encourage the chair or board members to kind of, get to interact, because I think that's where you're going to have a better understanding of what they're proposing to do and how they're proposing to do this. And obviously, there'll be some questions regardless that the board's going to have, which once the applicant's kind of gone through their initial presentation, the chair can certainly ask if any of the members of the board have any questions of the applicant at that point in time. We would ask that any communications go through the chair, so that it can't just become a, Med sitting at the end and just directly talking to the applicant back and forth. That would, our minute taker would probably quit very quickly. So if you have a question, we would certainly ask that, hand raise or attention of the chair, just to make the chair aware that you have a question, and that the chair then can direct you to ask the question of the applicant. It'll keep things cleaner as far as the minutes are, as opposed to, again, becoming more of just a conversation back and forth. Certainly, if you have a follow-up question, again, it would be, just getting the attention of the chair asking, letting them know that you have a follow-up question. You go through that process, and then once that the board doesn't really have any more questions of the applicant, the chair will, at that point in time, open it up for the public to speak. Most of the time, I think the rules of procedure might even state this, is that we would ask for anybody that's in favor of the application first to speak. If people have had their opportunity, when they come up to speak, you will need to ask them for their name and their address for the minute taker. Once we've gone through that portion, then the opportunity is given to anybody that's opposed to the applicant. Certainly, it's up to the chair's discretion to then allow if there's some, especially if there was some opposition spoken, to be able to give the applicant a chance to speak to that. Once you do that, you do have to kind of go back through the cycle of letting the applicant speak, anybody speaking in favor, anybody opposed. You kind of have to give everybody a chance to rebut the previous comments that have been made. Once that's kind of gone through the process and there's no more really questions or public input, the public hearing portion of the meeting will be closed. And at that point, the board will start their deliberations. And if you look in your book, you will note that Corinne had kind of pulled the criteria for what the board is really going to be reviewing. She's pulled it to the front of the book. It's probably also a little further in your book, but knowing this is really the main focus of what the criteria is going to be looking at and reviewing, you'll see the section where it says section 46-565, the licensing board review procedures. There's the three criteria there that really is what the board's going to be discussing, one, 2, and 3. So the board can, and this will be up to, again, to the kind of the discretion of the chair, is how you're going to do that. If you have a general discussion, the best way I would recommend that it happen is you discuss item 1. When you're done with that and you're kind of clear, move on to item 2, and then move on to item 3. When it comes time to vote, we will be voting on finding of fact. So what you can make discussions of the 3 items, and then what we would be looking for is a motion and we try and make our first motions always in the positive. So let's say we've gotten to that point, you've had your initial discussion, the chair would be then asking for a motion from somebody. If Thomas so desired, he could make the motion to approve the application for a large group home at 3 Washington Street. We would need a second at that point in time, and then we have that motion sitting there, and then we would go into item number 1. And you would have another, you don't need a motion at that point in time, but the chair can just make note that we're voting on criteria number 1. You've already discussed it. You've already kind of made your opinions, your thoughts clear. At this time, we'd be voting. If everybody votes positive on 1, or however the vote goes on 1, we'd move on to 2. You'd be asking for a vote on item number 2, and you're really voting to see if you believe that they've met that criteria of number 2, and then on to 3. And then ultimately, the 4th vote would be a vote on the motion that you have before you to approve that application for that license. Just so it's clear. So if you spoke to and voted on 1 through 3 and voted, you would feel they've met that criteria in all 3 of them, then your vote for the motion for the whole overall should be in the positive. If you voted on the positive for 2 of these criteria, but you voted negative on 1 of them, well, then ultimately you need to vote no on that approval, because they have to meet all 3 criteria. And if you feel they don't meet one of the criteria, then ultimately your vote for the overall motion to approve should be a negative. If we get through this process, and ultimately it's going to take a vote of a quorum, so we have a board of 5, so a quorum will be 3 people. So we would need 3 yes votes on the motion for this application to be approved. If not, if we were to receive a 2 to 3 vote, then what we need at that point in time is the only action you've taken is to initially kind of to deny the approval. You haven't denied it. And this is, Thomas and I talked about this a little bit earlier. Some of this stuff is very repetitious, but what we need at that point in time is we need a motion to deny the application. and then a vote again. And then we don't have to go back through all the criteria or all that type of stuff. At this point in time, it would just be, okay, if the first vote was a 2-3 to approve it, we would need a vote, next motion to deny the application, and we would just take an overall vote on that motion. Does anybody have any questions in regards to that sequence of voting?
So John, it's basically paralleling the ZBA process. For those of you
Exactly.
familiar with variance processes.
Exactly. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is if we end up across, there's certainly obviously appeal processes that are available to anybody, and we just need to be prepared if at some point in time something ends being appealed, whether it be appealed back to this board for a rehearing, or if it ultimately makes it across the street into the court system. We need to have just the best, available minutes, because that's really what we're gonna have to put in front of the judge. That's why we go through the voting of the finding of facts. We can't just throw up there that we wanna make a motion to deny something and deny it without reason. And that has to be very clear. And also for the affirmative, if we're approving it, why are we approving it? Well, we're approving it because we feel it met all three of these criteria. And again, certainly if you have any questions moving forward, if you don't have my contact information, I can certainly make sure Corinne has it. You can certainly at any time reach out to me, or even during a meeting. Again, if the questions, I'll be here, Corinne will be here for these meetings. And we certainly don't mind, because we also do the ZBA, as Med said, this is very, very much running parallel to the way the ZBA meetings are run. So we can certainly try and answer any questions you have. And with that, again, if anybody has any questions in regards to the book itself, anything in there that I can try and answer at this point?
So I just have,
Recognize Allison.
thank you so much. I just have one question. So do I need to say my name every time, or that's okay, as long as I've been recognized?
I think since the chair just kind of recognized you, I think that's fine. It's for the minute taker. Maybe if he doesn't, at this point in time, it would be beneficial probably just to state the name, just for the minute taker, just to make sure that it's clear to her who's speaking.
So,
Should continue to do that.
It's very helpful, yes, thank you.
so just a quick question on the facilities that are already grandfathered in. Will they have to begin the application process, or they don't have to do that at all?
I'm sorry,
The facilities that are previously grandfathered in, that they've been in place prior to this zoning law being passed, will they have to apply annually, or they're just
no,
exceptions?
if I may, Mr. Chair, no, since they're already in play, they'll still have to get the license. So this is an annual license, so this will require, this first time around, I think it's going to be a little, just making sure they have a complete application, obviously, and inspections from, again, one of the processes of this application is an inspection from the fire department and either myself or our housing inspector for our housing and health standards. And that'll be presented to the board. So unless there was something really, wrong on that end of it, this first time around, I'm not quite sure. There might not be a lot there to see. But come next year, after it's been tracking, if there's something that kicks up that says, the fire department's been there, 3 times a week for the whole year, or the police department's been there, then there's some things here that would probably trigger under the criteria for review from this committee. Did that answer? Thank you.
The chair recognizes Matt.
Thank you. And just a little bit more fill in, those projects that do go through CIP, the way the CUP, excuse me, I got budget on my brain. They actually backtrack, so that the CUP anticipates that you'll get a license, and the license looks backwards. So if they were to run into a situation where they couldn't maintain their license, it would dissolve their CUP potentially also. So it backtracks. And I guess the theory was that, at some point, most of these will move, they'll build new facilities, et cetera, so over time, they will probably go through the CUP process, right? And John, you might want to take time just to point out the provisional license, the suspension and revocation also, because we kind of started walking down that road a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 46567.
$46,567.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so as Med mentioned, there is a provisional status that there's a couple things the board can certainly do to go back a little bit before this one. Actually, the board can also condition licenses, then that's kind of spelled out right underneath the criteria that they need to meet. There is also the ability to put conditions on it for if the board decides there's something that needs to be conditioned. As we spoke about a little bit earlier, is that maybe something along the line, if it's one of the small group home that's in a more, which is allowed in some of the more residential type neighborhoods, there might be a condition on there that, no visitors are allowed after a certain hour, because you're in a more of a residential neighborhood and there shouldn't be people just showing up at 10 or 11 o'clock at night to visit or something. So there is that ability for the board to put conditions on others. There's also then again the ability under section 46-567 for provisional license status, and it also covers suspension or revocation of licenses. So that will certainly cover a lot of the other areas where, again, moving forward if need be. If there's certain things that are happening, but you're not quite to a level, especially for a renewal, if it's not quite to a level that feel that you don't want to approve it, but you want to have some better behavior being shown, you could issue a provisional license, conditioned on that there be those improvements that occur. So again, I think the board does have some certain flexibility. And if you haven't had the chance to read this, if tonight when you get home, if you want to some light reading, you could certainly read the rules and where that can occur. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Thomas Savastano.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for either you, John, or for Med, about what is considered, proper use of email to communicate, like just about like whether you'll be able to attend and sort of that be it, because I know that the business takes place here.
Certainly. So the email, certainly as I think, Corinne will send stuff out via email, responding back. The one thing that you don't want to do is don't hit, reply all with things. It's just a safe practice to get into because, again, especially if you're, to start to, if you have a question about a specific application or something, if you start hitting reply all and there's a conversation starts back up on that, then you could be crossing over into that you have a quorum that are talking about this. And it's not, during not during a noticed public hearing, public meeting. So, you just really, if it's just a one-on-one, but you should also, if it's anything to deal with the applications itself, the application itself, I certainly would, if you have a question, I think you certainly reaching out to staff for that. I would certainly save any conversation you have about an application itself. It should either be just a question to staff and or occur here at the meetings.
The chair recognizes Alison Welch.
Just sort of a mundane question. Do we meet monthly regardless of whether or not there's applications?
Not unless we have any sort of ongoing business that's occurring that we feel that needs the attention of the board. But unless we have an application, most likely we would put it off until the following month. I think that we'll find this first year is probably going to take us a little bit to, we're going to have to kind of beat the bushes a little bit and determine what some of the existing uses, who they are and where they are. Obviously, we know right off the bat some, but there's going to be some. So this first year might be a little bit sporadic while we're going through that process. Mr. Chair, if I may, couple of other things that we have before you tonight for the board. We do need to adopt the rules of procedure as well as the schedule that's here. So at some point, if we could have somebody make a motion for the adoption of the rules of procedure and then a vote on that, that would be great.
Am I okay with making motions? Yeah, okay. I move that we adopt the rules of procedure as provided. Could I get a second, please?
Martha Curtis, I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
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 The next item?
Schedule.
The schedule, if I may, Mr. Chair, so everybody should note in the inside cover of your book, there is a 2022 meeting schedule. And again, that we'd be looking to adopt that just as a manner of procedure. Obviously, some of that will change depending on if we have applications or not, and you'll see on there, you'll see the deadline. It's Corinne's put the deadline on there. She's also put the inspection date, so as I've noted that any of these new licenses will require an inspection from fire and health and code. And then you'll see the actual meeting date. So really, at this point in time, what you're adopting, looking to adopt it would be the meeting dates on the right-hand side of that sheet.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
The chair recognizes Matt.
So, obviously, what staff is doing is they're creating those dates on a basis to keep everything open, so that should applications come in and they be available, that we can then carry forward the meeting. Because not every one of them is going to be renewal. Sometimes they'll be coming out of CUP and things like that. But there's also in the code some specific renewal dates for different classifications. So even though there's an awful lot of dates reserved, I think as John is saying, it's not likely we'll meet as often as that. And I just wanted that to be clear before I make the motion to approve the schedule.
So you did just make the motion?
I did.
May we have a second on that motion, please?
This is Tom Savastano. I'll second
Thanks, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
it. Aye.
The schedule is accepted and is presented.
At this point, Mr. Chair, if staff doesn't, we have no more for the board tonight, and if the board doesn't have any further questions, I certainly, the chair certainly may adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
May I have a second, please?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Probably don't have to make a motion either, but it sounds good.